And welcome into the FFU Week 15, baby. We are here ready to roll, knock out those playoff rankings to push you into potentially semifinal matchups. So we got myself, hashtag the Cuban Missile Crisis. You can tell who I'm about, Mr. Chuba. And with my co-host, SC Romero, hashtag Rico. They both have juicy matchups today. How you doing? How you doing, SC?
Good, brother. Good. How are you doing yourself? This is exciting, man. I mean, if you're here talking, either way, even if you're not in playoffs, hope you're listening. If you are in playoffs, definitely hope you're listening because this is what we fight for, right? This is where we're coming into the ship and making sure all our ducks align to get that championship and host it in front of our league mates. Say, hey, we did it. So here we go.
Yeah, I like this little slip of the duck mention because you're a big Oregon Duck guy yourself, so I like it. I like it.
You know it, man. Let's go.
Yes, sir. So we're gonna jump into these running back rankings. You know how we do our running back rankings show. We do them in tiers of 6. So we were trying to go as deep as we can. We have a full allotment of players. We're past the bye apocalypse. There's no really big bye weeks or anything like that this week. So we're moving on. Most teams are at full strength. So you are going to need all your ammunition this week if you are not lucky enough to have a bye. If you have a bye this week, you know what? You could just sit back and enjoy the ranking show, as we talked about for you. So let's hop into our tier 1 running backs. These are the big dogs. It is myself, SC's rankings, and Jeremy's consensus rankings in PPR. So we're going to go through the top 6. The first guy cracking off is Mr. Joe Mixon going up against the Miami Dolphins. Our second guy is Bijan Robinson going up against this juicy Las Vegas Raiders defense. Our third guy, no surprise, Derrick Henry, the big dog, should eat against the New York Giants. Our fourth guy, Saquon Barkley, going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, which is a tough defense, but I mean, it's Saquon. It's really hard to fade him. Our RB6 is Devon Achane going up against the Houston Texans defense. And our guy rounding out number 6 is Jahmyr Gibbs going up against the Buffalo Bills. Who is a guy you kind of want to hype up, or a guy you're lower on in this tier of players, I see?
Guy hype up Bijan, I guess. Maybe either of these guys, you can't really hype them up more than what they are right now, right? But Bijan, when he looks at the Falcons offense, that's really the only person I want in that offense in the fantasy playoffs. Drake London, I like him, man, but Kirk's been awful. Kyle Pitts hasn't been doing much. In Dynasty, I do like him, but as far as playoff matchups, I don't know if I'm starting anyone in the Atlanta offense unless it's Bijan Robinson. I just think he's getting the carries. He's going to get, even with Tyler Algier kind of sneaking in there. I mean, I'm not worried about that. But also, I mean, speaking on Algier, he's someone I could slip in there too, But Bijan, I think, is the only guy you want. Person you're not necessarily as high on. It's hard to fade Saquon, man, but this is going to be a good matchup. They're in Philly. That's the benefit there. Philly or Pittsburgh has a good run game as well, so it could be a nice little matchup for him. But we know Saquon can get some of them. I saw an interesting stat where it was something like 13 or 15 plays at the 1-yard line, and Jalen Hurts has all the carries, right? So that kind of sucks, but it hasn't held back Saquon. He's still the RB1, right? Him and Henry switch off, but so in that situation, you still got to start him, man. I think he's you rolled him all season. You're not going to stop riding him now just because some matchups get tougher. So I like that. And then Gibbs is interesting too. I think the Bills can do something, and the Monty is the scary part, right? Because sometimes Monty overshadows Gibbs, so that's something to be considerable about. But again, he's one of the guys you rolled all season, so it's like we got to keep him in there.
Yeah, I think with your point on Saquon, in half PPR, he's only 2 times this year gone under double-digit points. It was the Dallas matchup, which is really weird that he didn't get that because it's Dallas, and the Cleveland matchup. Those are only 2 times he's been under 10. Even with the vulturing of the touchdowns, Hurt you talk about, he still has double-digit touchdowns on the season. He's got 13 combined, 6.1 yards a carry. He's a stud, and I get it. The concern is Pittsburgh, but we've seen guys get there. We saw like Tyrone Tracy get there. We saw a couple other guys get there against this Pittsburgh defense because it's really good. But this Eagles offense is a force. And the strength is Hurts and Saquon really they're just going to grind you to death. Like, that's their plan. They want to carry it 40-plus times a game, really do that for you. So, I think I have him with the PPR rankings, they knock him down a little bit. I have him at 5. You have Saquon at 4. They're clearly an auto start. We're not worried about them. We're both a little bit higher on Henry. We both love Bijan this week and Mixon, right? Those are the clear guys. I think the most interesting guys are kind of the tier 2 guys that kind of fall a little bit lower for whatever reason. Like, for me, the guy that in tier 1 that I want to hype up is Chuba Hubbard. And That's why he's on there. It's a dream matchup against the Cowboys. Like, you fire him up. And for you, it's Rico Dowdle. Rico Dowdle's a little bit lower. We'll talk about him a little bit later, but those are the guys we clearly like. So yeah, if you have these guys in tier 1, I think it's glorious. And then you move on to tier 2, and then go from there. Yeah. So let's jump into our tier 2 guys. These are our running backs 7 through 12, where maybe there's a few warts or a few question marks, but we're firing them up regardless. So the first guy that we just talked about, that's Chase Brown going up against Tennessee. I know the matchup seems worrisome, but he's getting an insane amount of volume. I don't care. I'm firing up Chase Brown. The RBA is Josh Jacobs going up against my Seattle Seahawks defense, which I'm not too excited about that, tell you the truth. Hopefully the Seahawks defense holds up. Our RB9 is a guy that I just hyped up. Is Chuba Hubbard going up against the Dallas Cowboys. And I mean, you don't really say too much about that. It's Dallas defense, right? Yeah. Our RB10 is Zach Charbonnet. Now, we have not gotten news that Walker's out. This is with the assumption that Walker is going to be out. If Walker's going to be out, we see Charbonnet get the insane amount of volume. He's going to be there. RB11, James Conner going up against a New England's Patriots defense that's just, not that good at this point in time. So you could fire up James Conner. And our RB12, this one we could probably talk about a little bit, is Alvin Kamara, because it's strictly a volume play, which especially with Derek Carr out, the offense is going to be abysmal. So I guess we could start with Alvin Kamara. How are you feeling about him? Because you have him the highest by far of the entire group. I have him unfortunately. Jeremy has 18. You have him at 6. So are you just completely trusting the process of the volume and like kind of just let the process lie and hope it works out? Or do you have a little bit of concern even though you have him at 6?
Yeah, I mean, I think because that's really all like same thing with Bijan. That's really the only thing in the offense I want, right? If Taysom Hill was still healthy, I would definitely have him lower. But with that being injured, I mean, I know Kendrick Miller got a touchdown last week and got a couple carries, but that doesn't concern me as much. Derek Carr may also be out, right? I don't think that's official quite yet, but he's questionable. So in that sense, if Carr is out for sure, I mean, I think Kamara's a smash play. You have to start him. I mean, you have to start him regardless. But if Derek Carr's out, I don't see any passing game really happening. I mean, whether it be J.K. there or Spencer Rattler, whoever it is, Kamara's still gonna be their guy. Short, dump all passes, get him the ball, let him use his elusiveness to get through them. So I really like that. Washington defense. It's not great. It's not bad. It's kind of the middle of the tier when it comes to the run defense. Like, it can be exposed. And Kamara is one of those veteran backs where he definitely knows how to expose even solid defenses. So same situation where I was saying Bijan, this is really the only play I'm doing in New Orleans at this point in time.
Yeah, I think because Carr broke it, like he fractured his wrist, and they ended up signing Danucci. He hasn't been put on IR, but the assumption is like he's not going to play the rest of the season. Yeah. There's also the injury guarantee we can get into. It's like $30 million guaranteed. So of course they're like, you know what, we're just going to not risk it even worse because then that money's going to be due next year. And with the Saints salary cap situation, which is really a disaster, it completely makes sense. Well, let's talk about like Chuba Hubbard and Zach Charbonnet, two guys that look like clear if the Walker injury stays true and like unfortunately the Jonathan Brooks things that happen, right? Those two guys have no challengers to their volume, and I mean they're good offenses. I think that's maybe interesting with Bryce Young. The offense looks a lot better, and with the Seahawks offense, right? You're going to be a tree bay. How are you feeling about those two? And if you have to decide between their two, is there one way you're leaning on one over the other?
If I'll decide on these two right now, it's going to be Chuba in this matchup. Dallas just has a worse defense than Green Bay. Where Zach Charbonnet, they could be playing from behind, possibly, because the offense is better. And Josh Jacobs has been on a tear. I mean, he's one of our top 6 backs there, or I guess he's 8 here, or consensus. He's my RB5, but it's still. They have an opportunity to play from behind. Gito's kind of been down a little bit, right? We've seen a lot more JSN, DK coming in, so if that offense goes into their passing game, I think the script just calls for the run, and they're like, this is working, so we're not going to stop it. Where I don't necessarily know if that's happening this week. They are playing in Seattle, so that's great. But because of the matchup, I'm going Chuba, especially with, Jonathan Brooks out. I mean, Chuba just got paid. He's going to go out there and ball. I'm regretting some Chuba trades that I denied at this point because I was scared about John Brooks, but now I don't. It's looking like a home run for all the people that stuck with Chuba.
Right. If you bought into Chuba this season and you just really dived into the uncertainty of the Jonathan Brooks injury, obviously no one projected a second ACL injury with Jonathan Brooks, but this is fantasy. This is the NFL football, not fantasy. This is football, right? Like injuries happen, guys fall down. And unfortunately for us, Jonathan Brooks bags holder, that's myself included, right? You're looking at him. We have to accept the reality, that guy might not never be the same ever again. So that contract they signed Chuba to just looks freaking fantastic because if you're doing projections at all, there's going to be maybe like 2 or 3 more guys getting more workload than Chuba Hubbard, and Dallas is the bottom 3 defensive fantasy points allowed. So it's going to be the Chuba Hubbard show. I think we can make the case to push him into the tier 1. That's why I have him, as I think I have an RB. What do I have him at? I'm RB4, so obviously I'm a little bit more bullish, but I think the volume's clearly going to be there, and it's a good matchup and everything, so it's just wheels up for all of these guys. I mean, this gets it even at James Conner. Against New England, they cannot stop the run. James Conner has been a really good back. I know people like Trey Benson, but it's I don't have concerns. So if you fire any of these guys up, you're good to go. If you have 2 of these guys this week against the matchup, against the top 16, like you're feeling pretty good. Like it's going to be a good matchup. Let's talk about, I think it gets a little bit more tricky in this tier 3 of running backs. This is RBs 13 through 18. And here's kind of where we have a little bit more questions. And maybe it's they're not getting all the volume, or if it's a bad matchup, or maybe it's a combination of the two. Because it starts out with Kyron Williams. And we saw Kyron Williams, if he gets the touchdowns, like he's going to get the volume. We did have 2 weeks ago, we did have the incident with Blake Corum, where Blake Corum started off the game and we're like, oh, what's going on? And then McVay comes out. He's like, no, we just want to keep him rested. And then he's just feasted. So I think he's fine. It's a tough matchup against San Francisco because San Francisco seems like they're revitalized based off of last week. Who knows which San Francisco we get, but he should be fine. The next guy is Rico Dowdle, your guy. That's your hashtag this week, going up against Carolina's defense, which we don't got to talk about how bad Carolina's defense is. They can't really stop anybody. So, yeah, if you have Rico, you're feeling good against Carolina. The RB15 is Tony Pollard going up against Cincinnati. Now, Pollard, it's just a volume. Like, the dude's awesome. If they have a good game script, Pollard will feast for you.
Right.
Our RB16 is Brian Robinson Jr., right? This is one where the New Orleans matchup, their defense is just a shell of itself. There's no competition. Eckler's out for probably the season due to concussion situation. We'll see. Yeah. He has no challengers to throw on this week. I think he's the guy that could probably rise up the most reps. Our RB17 is kind of a TBD because we don't know if Bucky Irving's going to play.
Yeah.
And it's a bad matchup against the Chargers, but Rachaad White, it's a volume play. We saw last week how good he was. And the last guy rounding out this tier is David Montgomery against Buffalo. So our second running back against Buffalo is Detroit. This game should be a shootout. And Buffalo, I know their defense has gotten a little bit better with Milano coming back and things of that nature. They still give up a ton of points to running backs for this, for fantasy. So for guys in this range, who kind of stands out to you, either like that you're higher on, that you're low on, or someone that you kind of want to talk about for a minute?
Oh, has to be Rico. I mean, I do have an RB15 here, but just in general, the volume play. I mean, the offense is running through him. He's going to get the carries, and this is a great matchup against a bad defense. So he could definitely be a week 1 winner for you. Kyron's interesting. I know San Fran does look bad, but it's also on a short week, right? They play Thursday night football, so that's where we have to be considerate about and what they do. I do like him. I think he gets the carries, but it also is a divisional matchup. So, it can always be tougher to grind those out there. For Montgomery, I'm not worried about that. Even that lower tier, he's still someone you got to plug and play because he does get the touchdowns. He gets the looks in the end zone over Jahmyr Gibbs. So that's something great for him as well. And Rachaad, I mean, I do like Rachaad. We saw what he did last week when Bucky went out. But it's also, if Bucky's there and healthy, Rachaad goes down because it's clear they like Bucky a little bit more. At least we're seeing more involvement with Bucky. So right now he's a great play, but Bucky is out is in, then Rashaad's going to slide down the rankings.
So let's say Bucky misses this game, which we don't know if he does or if he doesn't. If he does miss this game, how high are you willing to push Rachaad up in your rankings, even though it is against the Chargers defense, which is pretty good?
Yeah, still a lot. I mean, maybe he could go above where Kyron's at, so maybe I give him at the top of this tier. But the Chargers still have a pretty nice front 7 as well in stopping the run. So I'm still not that confident in it. This is going to be a tough matchup for Tampa, especially with the way Baker's been playing. It hasn't been great. So if Baker get the passing game going, so they aren't one-dimensional, then that's a whole different topic. But he's been looking rough since he had a stretch where he was looking phenomenal. Now it's just a rough stretch. So these will take. They're playing for a playoff spot, right? They're not guaranteed in. So I think there's a lot of things at stake here. But either way, Rachaad can have top 15 upside. But it definitely depends on if Bucky's there, because if they're splitting committee, it's not happening.
Yeah, because like we saw in last week's game, like he's took the majority of the work. Obviously, it was against Vegas. Vegas is a much worse defense, but like if he can give you the passing game usage, and there's no I think he's a top 12ish guy, and you can make the case for a little bit higher. this after we get out of this tier, the top 18, it starts to kind of fall off a little bit. We have a few more question marks. There's a lot of quality names, I will say, in this grouping, but guys that have serious works their profile well. Maybe you're not super comfortable starting them. So this is our tier 4, running backs 19 through 24. It starts out with a guy that's a big name, Jonathan Taylor, but it's the Denver Broncos defense. And that's not a good defense you want to play because that front seven's stout. They've really built up the trenches of Denver. It's a tough matchup. And if you didn't score a touchdown, it could be a worrisome game where you're starting him. Our RB20, another guy that everyone knows. It's Aaron Jones going up against Chicago. I will say Chicago is much easier to get them in the ground than it is through the air. But still, it's like a Chicago defense that is a plus defense, right? The next guy, James Cook, our RB21, another big name. But Detroit's a notoriously just stout defense. And a defense that's really hard to get any fancy points against. So if you have Cook, it's not a great matchup. You could technically bench him if you want to. Our RB22 is Ramondre Stevenson, another stout-ish defense. We've seen the Cardinals kind of turn the corner. The offense has been up and down, but the defense seems like it's been more of a strength for them. So Ramondre is kind of there by default, I think is the most case, because we're all relatively similar. There's only a few points separating them. The next guy, it's your guy that you were hyping up. It's Najee Harris. Oh, who's he playing? Oh, the Eagles front seven, right? We're seeing Jalen Carter just wreck fools up front. It's a tough matchup for him. So that one we can hit on too. And then our RB24 is Isaiah Pacheco, and this is due to Jeremy being incredibly high on him. He has him at RB16. I think we are on the approach of I don't know how we feel about Pacheco this week against Cleveland, right? We're still waiting to see if he can get that volume. So for you in this tier of 19 through 24, who's the guy that you kind of want to hype up, or maybe the guy that you're a little bit lower on?
I mean, it's really hard. I mean, the one you can't say is Ramondre, just because it's against Arizona. All these guys I love. Like, if you said, hey, would you trade for these guys? I'd probably say yes throughout the season. They're just in some bad matchups this week. You know, like you mentioned Jonathan Taylor at Denver. I love Jonathan Taylor. I think it's going to help him out with Anthony Richardson. But as you mentioned, that touchdown is going to be what really sets him apart, because I don't know if he gets over 100 this game, even if he gets the volume. Aaron Jones, another great one. But Darnold's been balling. And Aaron Jones is kind of irrelevant in that factor when he's balling, right? So Aaron Jones should, if he gets it going, awesome. But this is probably going to be something where they try to get through the run early, but they're going to be using the passing game just because of what Darnold's been doing. James Cook, another one. Detroit, this is interesting because Detroit has a not-so-good secondary, but their front seven is great. And so they could try to force the ball in passing because they can't get it going. But if Josh Allen isn't someone that can get it going running, it kind of struggles a little bit. So that's going to be a fun matchup to watch, but I'm not that crazy on James Cook. As I said, Ramondre, I think he has the best matchup in this tier. Najee, you know, he's my guy. I love him, but this is probably one of their tougher matchups all year. Just the way Philadelphia has been playing. They have younger guys. They have bigger guys. They have veterans. They have everything in between to make it happen. So it's a lot of stuff that can go in Najee's way, but it's a lot of stuff that can go against him. Isaiah Pacheco, man, I know they want to get him involved. I just haven't seen it. And at Cleveland, I just don't trust it. This is just hard. Kansas City, man, they're winning their games, but I don't even feel comfortable saying they're the Super Bowl champs, you know. So this is gonna be tough. I think I don't know if I'm even starting Isaiah in the playoffs. If you have him and you need to, sure, but I'm scared of starting him for sure.
Yeah, this is a tough spot with them, right? Like, because we don't know how that volume is going to work out. If you're telling me he's going to get all the work and they're just going to bench Kareem Hunt, I'll have a lot more interest in him. But like all these guys in this tier, we talk about James Cook going up against a Detroit defense that really just struggles. The 60-70 rushing yards a game is what they're giving up. Yeah. We also get into the Chargers matchup. They're giving up 92 yards on the ground. The Eagles, we talk about with Najee Harris, they're only giving up 84 yards on the ground. The Vikings, this is another bad matchup, 72. So this tier of guys in particular, you kind of hope you have them on bye weeks because this is the rough matchup where you start them. You're more than likely going to start these guys because it's hard to bench Cook, it's hard to bench Taylor, hard to bench Jones and all of these guys. But like, there are other guys we talked about earlier, and you can make the case, and like guys in the next tier down who theoretically you can make the case to put those guys above these guys, even though these guys all in this tier have super strong name cachet. Right. But this kind of rounds out our tier 2. So I know maybe you don't play it, maybe you do, but it's just tough. So let's
this one
go kind of. Yeah, go ahead.
I would say this one goes hard too because I feel all these guys in this tier have great playoff matchups the rest of the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's just their week one matchup is rough. So it's like if you can survive week one, you're probably cruising. But it's all about, in a playoff, not your record doesn't matter anymore. So you just gotta survive and get to it. If you get to it, then you'll be grooving. So
all right, so this is our tier 5. This gets into our RBs 25 through 30. Starts out with Sincere McCormack. This is my guy against the Falcons. He was mentioned the starting running back this week by the head coach, but I guess there's some question marks, so that's why I'm higher on him than you guys from there against the Falcons. 26, DeAndre Swift going up in a bad matchup against the Vikings defense, which is one of the more pass funnel defenses in the NFL. So if you have Swift, it's tough. The next guy, Tyrone Tracy, is a guy we've been hyping up all season. This one's a tough one because it's the same thing. It's the Baltimore Ravens defense, and they are another pass funnel defense where if you have them, it's a tough start. The next guy after that is Braylon Allen, and we just don't know how that offense is going to go because we don't know if Brees is starting, if we do or not. So, that's the question marks with that. Our RB29, Jalen Warren, another bad matchup, right? This is Philadelphia Eagles defense. You're not going to get them through the air, the ground. You could get them through the air, but even then, their defense has been stout. Our RB30, Javonte Williams rounds it out. Maybe we talk about Javonte for a sec. Going up against a Colts defense that is not the best. Where if Javonte gets the volume, I think it's a smash play for you. But we have no idea with that. So let's talk about Javonte for a sec. Why? What's the case for you with Javonte and why you have him at RB19 this week?
I just think he will get the touches in the red zone. Their defense is good up front. It's not the best. Their secondary is better, in my opinion. Their secondary has guys that can close in on the ball very quickly. So you have Cortland Sutton, Humphrey, Troy Franklin, whoever the damn receivers are for the Broncos. It's different every week, it seems like, outside of Sutton. But I'm saying that because even if Bo Nix gets the ball to them, their secondary is going to close in very quickly. So they're not going to be able to gain a lot of traction to get the yards. So they're not necessarily going to be finding the end zone as much as I think. So that can leave open opportunity for Javonte to get the ball in the red zone. Granted, Bo Nix has some ability, can scramble here and there, but Javonte's still good though. So you might be able to see a couple touchdowns for him this week. That's why I would be higher on him for it. I have him at RB19 this week. So
yeah, that's just my biggest concern. If he gets the volume, I'm 100% with you. It's just the way they've used that running back that room this year has just been so all over the place. And that's why I'm a little bit lower. But yeah, it's a good matchup against the Colts. If he gets the volume and you play him, he could be a top 12 running back for you this week. It's just it's so hard to predict for that backfield. It's just all over the place. But yeah, if you want to ride with Javonte, 100% get it. Because the guys in this tier, we talk about Tracy, we talk about the guy I'm higher on, McCormack, there's issues, and it's not even a good matchup for him against them. So this is the tier of guys where it's just tough. You I think the best way to go about it is staking your claim for your guy. And maybe this gets into Braylon Allen in that backfield. We don't know how it's going to go, with the Jets, if Brees is going to play or not. And then on top of it, he was clearly splitting running back, splitting the role with the other guy in that backfield too. So even if you are starting Braylon against Jacksonville, it's just there's no sure thing with it, right? So I think that's why him and the other guys in this tier, it's a lot of these guys, it's just bad matchup or the volume is against bad defenses. So that's how it kind of rounds out with guys in this tier. If you want to be higher, you want to be lower than guys, 100% get it. Is there anyone in this tier before we jump to the next tier that really just terrifies you of you don't want to play this week?
DeAndre Swift. I think that's I'm looking at it. Of all these guys, I'd rather play everyone else over DeAndre Swift, and that's including Braylon. Of course, if Brees is playing, I'll stop that. But if not, DeAndre Swift, I'd rather play Westbrook Akine over him, on the flex, or other guys that are lower, in the flex than him. I just don't trust it against Minnesota. At Minnesota too, you can maybe convince me if it's at Chicago, but it's at Minnesota. Yeah, I'll pass on him this week.
Yeah, no thanks. I'm with you. I really don't want to play Swift. If you have him, I would look otherwise, just because it could be rough. Let's go to our tier 6 running backs. These are our RBs 31 through 36, and then maybe we'll jump into the best of the rest. These guys, there's no sure thing with these guys. Let's just be real. It's guys that will start out and just go for a bit. Travis Etienne, the Jets defense. Let's be real. The Jets defense is still a strength, and it could just be a matchup where Mac Jones is your quarterback. You have no idea how it's going to go. Our RB32, this is the other guy that's his running mate, is Tank Bigsby. Maybe they get the lead, and this is how it works out for Tank Bigsby, but it's the same thing. We don't know how that's going to go with these guys. So that's why they're here more by default. Our RB33, Guerrero. This is the thing with Guerrero. He's dealing with injury. It's an early game. We don't know how it's going to play. If we got some clarity on it, I think we could massively boost Rendo up rankings. But
Yeah.
right now, we just don't know, right? So that's the one that's probably the most TBD of all these rankings. Our RB34, Jerome Ford. No surprise we have Jerome Ford over Nick Chubb because they're more than likely going to be trailing in this game. It's the Jameis thing, right? Like they're passing a bunch. Maybe Ford gets there, but just a rough matchup against Kansas City, which is by far the worst against any defense. Like that's the one now that you have matchup against running back against Kansas City. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Our RB35, Patrick Taylor, the other San Francisco running back, same thing. Like we're taking kind of a stab at like an injury backfield. We just don't know. And then the other guy, which maybe we talk about Edwards here. Edwards kind of falls in here by default against just Tampa Bay, where you're going to need a touchdown from him. So how are you feeling about the guys in this tier? Who's the guy on hype or who's the guy that you're lower on?
I think Edwards, because I think he's the most likely to get the carries when you don't know what Garando or Taylor. Even if it's say Garando's out and Taylor, that means they're probably activating Abidekonda from the practice squad for him to add to the active roster. So that could be something. He's out a week into the system, so he understands it a little bit better. That could be something that moves forward. Gus is the guy that he's just gonna probably get the volume. It's a great matchup against Tampa. That's mediocre against the run as well. So that's something where he's probably your best bet in here, and it's tough because with ETN and Bigsby, you don't really know which way it's going. Chubb will get the red zone work if they get there, and that's the big question if they get there. So if you're playing Chubb, you're hoping for a touchdown or two to have have a good reason to start him. So
because like we talked about, the Chiefs give up 58 rush yards. It's by far the lowest of any running back like that. So if you're starting Chubb, like I will just say good luck to you if you don't get a touchdown. Like it's just going to be a disaster for you, for a player that are playing those guys. And let's be real, like if you're starting those guys, like your team's more than likely not in the playoffs just because those running backs are just not good. Let's before we get out of here, let's do like our best of the rest. So outside of our top 630 running backs, so top 36 running backs, is there anyone in particular that stands out to you that you kind of want to maybe make the case where could be a spot start and maybe could help someone that's in need of some running back production this week?
I kind of mentioned it earlier, and I'm going to say Tyler Algier, just the Falcons. It's a great matchup against the Raiders. Granted, Bijan's the guy there, and Algier, they still involve him. So is he going to get you 10 fantasy points? No, I don't know. Because I don't think he's getting that off of yardage. Maybe if he gets a couple of receptions, you definitely want a touchdown. So that's where you're questioning it. But that's also the guy where I feel the most confident in, because like Kendrick Miller, you're hoping touchdowns guaranteed. Like he's not necessarily involved in that. Blake Corum, he's not necessarily involved in the offense. They get him in there, but it's not like great volume. Where Algier is starting to get a little bit more uptick in his role there, a lot more than it was. Like he saw at the beginning of the season, kind of died down. Now we're seeing a lot more. So that's probably the guy I like. And then I see him right above at 47, Sean Tucker. If Bucky Irving can't go, they've already said it's going to be Rashad White and Sean Tucker. So that could be something as well. We saw some big plays from Tucker early on. So that's somewhere where you might need to. These guys, regardless, though, these are like desperate flex plays. Like if you're just getting hit with IRs and you still made the playoffs, these are your desperate guys where it's like, oh, man, I really don't want to. But if I need a spot, here it is. Because there's not much comfortability with these guys right now.
Yeah, 100% if you're in this range, like with the Tampa Bay backfield. That's like I have Tucker there at RB25. Kind of like my thought process is like where like I don't think Bucky plays. But like let's say Bucky plays, he massively shoots up, and then Tucker, like you're probably not going to play him. So that's just it is what it is with this range of guys. I guess you could make the case for maybe like you go with Bajillo McLaughlin against Indy, but like that's also hyping up where we talked about Jelante earlier in the week. Like that's a good start. It's just with guys in this range, I think it's uncertainty. We don't know. There's injury. It'll clear up. And like, unlike the Thursday night football game, with a few of these guys in injury situations with like Tampa Bay, like we know how that situation is going to break out by Sunday. So unlike the San Francisco game, we'll have a little bit more time. So like we'll get some more clarity on that. We could see how rankings will adjust. So like, obviously we're dropping these running back rankings early in the week. This is a Wednesday. So we'll have more clarity by as the week rolls on. So these rankings will shift. But that's our week 15 running back ranking. So if you're in playoffs, you have these guys. Best of luck to you. I hope it works out for y'all in playoffs and you move on to the semifinal matchup. So for myself, for SC, for Jeremy, for Aaron, hopefully you have it. And then tomorrow we're gonna be jumping into wide receivers. So good luck with the running backs and hopefully you win the week. So take care, folks.